the man who's had more success blocking President Trump in court than any other person in this country, Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson, came out with an aggressive move. Now, he won the blockage of the original travel ban. Today, he didn't just file a new lawsuit. He used a maneuver to put the ball back in Trump's court, going to a judge to argue that if the new ban is basically the same as the old ban, which Trump's own aides have sometimes said, then the victory that was won against that last ban should just apply and block the new one. And he argues if it doesn't, it's actually up to Trump's lawyers to explain why not. In law, that's called shifting the burden. In politics, it's called taking no prisoners. If this strategy works, Ferguson will distinguish himself again as an effective inside player leading the Trump resistance. If it fails, critics may say he really overplayed his hand. Who's right? Well, Bob Ferguson is here to explain the strategy. Again, the Attorney General for the state of Washington. Good evening. Why are you challenging the ban this way?
Well, it's unconstitutional, and it's pretty straightforward. While there have been some changes with the revised order that narrows the scope, Ari, of the executive order, the bottom line is that two key provisions that we challenged originally, the ban on the now six nations and the refugee ban, those are virtually unchanged. The language is virtually identical. So our view is really, as you mentioned at the outset, that we have a temporary restraining order already in place. The language hasn't changed. Therefore, quite simply, it still applies.
But what if the judge says to you, okay, maybe it does, but this is a big deal. We would have to have another normal hearing like the last one. You don't get a shortcut.
Yeah, we would welcome a hearing. If Judge Robart decides he wants to have an oral argument about this issue, we, of course, welcome that, because each time we've had an oral argument against the Department of Justice and the Trump administration, frankly, we've won. So we welcome the chance to have a conversation with Judge Robart about this temporary restraining order. But the bottom line is you don't get to evade a temporary restraining order just by making a few changes to the executive order. If it's fundamentally essentially a Muslim ban, it is what it is, and the court should uphold and maintain that temporary restraining order.
Well, that's important. Are you saying this is kind of a trick the Trump administration pulled to try to just protect the same policy?
Well, what I'm saying is it can't be a game of whack-a-mole for a court. In other words, when a temporary restraining order is put in place, and as you know, Ari, it's a tough burden to get that temporary restraining order put in place. Once you have it, the target, the defendant, cannot simply evade the effect of that restraining order by issuing a new order that maybe makes changes to A and B, but still leaves problems C and D in effect. If you do that, the temporary restraining order, the injunction, should remain in place. So yes, we acknowledge there have been some changes, some important ones, but at the end of the day, two key provisions, if you just compare the language, they are virtually identical. Therefore, the president cannot evade the restraining order that's already in place from Judge Robart, and he has not moved from that so far.
You call it a Muslim ban. That gets to the heart of it, and that goes, of course, to intent, because as you know, and as I think most viewers have heard by now, this order doesn't use the word Muslim, right? So you're making a larger argument about what's really going on, what's behind maybe just the PC language. I want to play Judge Robart in the original hearing, which, as you mentioned, you did win, but he was skeptical of the idea that you could just take any old campaign rhetoric and use that as sort of the intent standard. Take a listen.
It seems to me that it's a bit of a reach to say the president's clearly anti-Muslim or anti-Islam based on what he said in New Hampshire in June.
The argument there is, well, there's been a shift, and the administration, as you know, is going to argue that shift has continued. Whatever he said in June evolved into the administration, and now, in response partly to your litigation, they've tried to evolve again. They're going to say, look, we're making the changes. This is what you asked of us, and you can't read the president's mind. What's your response?
Well, first, Judge Robart asked tough questions of both parties to the trial court, and that's a judge's job, right? So we appreciate those questions. But the bottom line is the intent is the intent. It did not change by removing Iraq and tweaking a few words, right? The intent is the intent, and Judge Robart and the Ninth Circuit actually agreed that we were more likely than not to succeed on the merits of our actual claim, and that's why they granted the rather extreme recourse of a temporary restraining order. So that's why we remain confident. Those two key provisions, Ari, you just compare them side by side. The language is virtually identical. Therefore, we're confident that Judge Robart will not change that temporary restraining order.
And what other evidence do you need on the folks basically who've worked on the ban? We showed Stephen Miller, who said they were about the same. That's part of your argument. Here's Rudy Giuliani in a widely quoted moment where he talked about the goal here. Take a listen.
When he first announced it, he said Muslim ban. He called me up. He said, put a commission together. Show me the right way to do it legally. And what we did was we focused on, instead of religion, danger. The areas of the world that create danger for us, which is a factual basis, not a religious basis. Perfectly legal.
Do you want to try to get Rudy Giuliani to testify?
I think there's a debate amongst my team on who gets the opportunity to do that. So yes, our intention is to obtain documents, emails, and take depositions of administration officials. And to your point, the individual from the administration you mentioned, Mr. Miller, he has said publicly in the last couple of weeks that really the policy of this ban is not going to change. That, again, will be something we use in court to go back to Judge Robart to show, look, Your Honor, the administration really has not changed the underlying policy here, and you've issued a restraining order, an injunction on that policy. Nothing has changed. The burden is on the federal government to demonstrate why he should lift that injunction.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Look, you've got a record here of 1-0, which is better than a lot of other folks in this field, but you've taken a really big swing with this strategy, so we're going to keep an eye on it. I know it's a very busy day. Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson, I appreciate you making time.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.